My name is Dusty Class. I am one of the rabbis at Temple Beth El, and we are so grateful to have you all with us for the second in our 4-part series, our comparative religion series this year, which for at least the second year, if not for more than that, is happening in partnership with Mecklenburg Metropolitan Interfaith Network, which most of you know as MECMIN. And as a former MECMIN board member, I'm always happy to say great things about MECMIN. But in particular, on a night like this, it is really, really, really good to be in collaboration and in connection with an organization who can help bring together faith institutions from all across the spectrum to get to know each other so that we can know more about each other. And that, I think, helps us like each other more, frankly, which is one of my favorite parts about all of this. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Reverend Ladane Pulaski, who will speak a little bit more and introduce our speakers, and then you'll see me again when we get to the question portion of our evening.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. It's great to see you. I'm Ladane Pulaski, the Executive Director of MECMIN. And just before we get started, I did put our website in the chat. If you are interested in learning more about us, the very best way to do that is to get on our email list. We send out an email newsletter every other week. So if you'd like to learn more about events like this, please take a chance to do that. And I also just wanted to take a point of privilege and let you all know that we've opened the applications for our Interfaith Youth Camp, which is called In Our Own Backyard. It's one of the highlights of our year. It's will be in June, the 23rd through the 26th. It's open to high school students. And the idea is to bring students together from different faiths, different races, different ethnicities. They come together, they do service projects, they visit houses of worship, they get to know one another, and it's just a great program. So if you know if there are any high schoolers in your life or in your congregation that you think would enjoy that, please send them our way. And I get the privilege tonight of introducing our speakers. I'm very excited about what we're going to hear and who we're going to hear it from. So just brief introductions. O.J. Sheppard is with us. He was born in Plant City, Florida, raised a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, served his full-time mission in San Bernardino. He's married to his best friend. He wrote that, not me, so that's great. Diane, they've been married for almost 17 years and are the proud parents of 3 children. During their 16 years of marriage, they've lived in Utah, Florida, and for the past 7 years in North Carolina. He's a financial analyst for Ally Bank. Prior to Ally, he worked for Bank of America. And some of his hobbies include traveling, playing board games, music, exercising, and family movie night. And he's a huge college football fan and proudly supports Florida State and BYU. So he served in many different church assignments since returning home from his mission, and currently serves as the first counselor of the Charlotte South Stake presidency, and recently spent 3.5 years in the Charlotte, North Carolina mission presidency. Paul Anderson is also here representing the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He was born in Georgia, grew up mostly in Texas, earned a PhD in music composition and theory, which sounds so cool, at Brandeis, and has been actively involved in music-related nonprofit organizations, including Charlotte Concerts and the Jensen Foundation Vocal Competition. He has worked at Bank of America for more than 23 years and is currently part of the Enterprise Data Architecture and Strategy Organization, which sounds immensely cool. I have no idea what any of those words mean when they're all put together, but it sounds really cool. Paul has also served a full-time mission in Santiago, Chile, and has been an avid student of the scriptures, and has a blog on the Book of Mormon, a daily blog that he writes. And he and his wife, Kristen, have 6 children. And our third panelist is Dr. Masoud Adeya. He had a long and esteemed career as a doctor specializing in pediatrics and adolescent medicine, received his medical degree from the University of Tabriz. Am I saying that correctly? In Iran. He did his residency at Mount Sinai in New York City, was the attending physician for over 30 years at Richmond Memorial Hospital and Sand Hills Regional Medical Center in North Carolina, and retired from medicine in 2015. He's married, has 3 children and 5 grandchildren, and is a member of the Baha'i community here in Charlotte. So welcome to you all. We're very excited to hear from you. And I believe that Mr. Sheppard and Mr. Anderson are going to speak first and tell us about the origin of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Thanks, LaDane. I'm Paul Anderson, and delighted to be here. And by the way, LaDane, thank you for the way that you shared those bios. That was enthusiastic. And I'll tell you, as you shared my bio, I thought, what an interesting guy. You really made me sound good, made me want to get to know myself better. So President Sheppard and I spent some time talking about how we wanted to organize our presentation this evening. And we decided that we wanted to talk about 3 different origins relating to our church. So the first will be the establishment of the church itself in 1830 in New York. The second will be our understanding of the creation of the world and kind of some additional insights that we have into that, building on what's in the book of Genesis. And then the third is what we were labeling our refugee experience. And you're probably familiar with early members of our church being driven across the country and finally settling in Utah. So we're going to talk about those 3 origin stories, and hopefully that'll help you get to know us a little bit better. You could say that our story begins as a reaction to dysfunctional interfaith dialogue. Let me explain what I mean by that. In the year 1820, the United States was experiencing something called the Second Great Awakening. Leaders and members of many churches labored energetically to gain new converts, and some of them traveled from town to town. They held what they called camp meetings. They held lots of different kinds of events, and there was a tremendous amount of enthusiasm. Western New York was actually a focal point of this activity, and it earned the name of the Burned Over District. So Joseph Smith was a 14-year-old young man living in Western New York at that time. And as he watched the religious fervor around him, and as he watched the passion that he saw from the people, all trying to convince him that their church was the right one and the other churches were wrong, he was really bothered by the way people were treating one another. So let me share with you a quotation from something he wrote years later, describing what he felt at the time and what he observed at the time. He said, "Great multitudes united themselves to the different religious parties, which created no small stir and division among the people, some crying low here and others low there. But notwithstanding the great love which the converts to these different faiths expressed at the time of their conversion, and the great zeal manifested by the respective clergy who were active in getting up and promoting this extraordinary scene of religious feeling, in order to have everybody converted, as they were pleased to call it, let them join what sect they pleased. Yet when the converts began to file off, some to one party and some to another, it was seen that the seemingly good feelings of both priests and converts were more pretended than real. For a scene of great confusion and bad feeling ensued, priest contending against priest and convert against convert, so that all their good feelings for one another, if they ever had any, were entirely lost in a strife of words and a contest about opinions." That quote really encapsulates what he felt and what he saw and what bothered him so much. You know, to me, that expression, the good feelings for one another, if they ever had any, conveys almost a kind of a cynicism of what can I even believe of what they're telling me based on how they're treating each other. Well, everyone claimed to be religious, but no one was acting like it. Finding no answers in the avalanche of information surrounding him, young Joseph turned to the Bible. And a verse in the New Testament caught his attention and really sunk in. And the verse said this, it's in the book of James in the New Testament: "If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not, and it shall be given him." Now, why was this passage so meaningful to him? I think it was because it contrasted so dramatically with the religious experiences that he was seeing around him. James was telling him that he could approach God directly in prayer, and that not only would God answer him, but perhaps more importantly, God would not upbraid him. The word upbraid means to find fault or to treat someone with contempt. Joseph said that he concluded, quote, "If God gave wisdom to them that lacked wisdom and would give liberally and not upbraid, I might venture." So Joseph carefully planned a time and a place to talk with God. Early on a spring morning in 1820, he walked into the woods near his home, a place that we today refer to as the Sacred Grove. In that secluded environment, in answer to a sincere prayer, Joseph saw God the Father and his son, Jesus Christ. They answered his question: join none of the churches, remain independent, additional answers will come. Over the next 10 years, Joseph received additional knowledge by revelation from God. He translated an ancient record called the Book of Mormon. He received power and authority from heavenly messengers. And on April 6th, 1830, he gathered a small group of believers in a log cabin in Fayette, New York, to organize the Church of Jesus Christ. So one lesson we learned from the establishment of our church is that the way we treat others, particularly others who believe differently from us, is an important indicator of what we really believe and who we really are. President Sheppard, I'll hand off to you.
Thank you, Brother Anderson, and thank you. I echo Brother Anderson and Ladane and your introduction. Yeah, I felt special as well. I just listening to it, I feel privileged. I feel privileged to be here. Brother Anderson is my brother. We at church, when we attend church, we call each other's brothers and sisters, and so we are all children of our Father in heaven. He shared with you something very important to our faith. Joseph Smith did see God the Father in a sacred grove. That is a very important part of our faith. That introduction to our origin of our faith rings deep in my heart every time I hear it. But now let's talk about the origin of the church, or the world actually, during that time. So Joseph Smith was called to be a prophet, just like Moses. And in doing so, he actually began to study the scriptures even more intensely. Joseph Smith began an intensive and prayerful study of the Bible, beginning with the book of Genesis, actually. He received additional insight into that text, which had become part of our sacred canon, which we call the Book of Moses. One passage of scripture actually hit Joseph Smith with great feeling. He was reading a passage and he saw that Moses was able to see God's workmanship. Moses was given in vision the entire earth. He was able to see every part of this earth. He was able to see every person who has lived, who currently lives, and who will live. Imagine that. Imagine being able to see in vision all the nearly 7 billion people on the earth right now. But then think way back and then in the future, how overwhelmed he must have been. He was so overwhelmed by it, he asked a question to the Lord. He says, "Tell me, I pray thee, why these things are so?" And God responds that he created this earth for his own purposes, but then offers the following explanation. And I'm going to quote actually from this book of Moses. He says, "The heavens, they are many, and they cannot be numbered unto men, but they are numbered unto me, for they are mine. And as one earth shall pass away, and the heavens thereof, even so shall another come. And there is no end to my works, neither to my words. For behold, this is my work and my glory, to bring to pass the immortality and eternal life of man." I love that. When I reflect upon a perfect and loving Father in heaven, that he wants all of his children to return back to him. Think of all the many millions of lives that have been, lost recently due to COVID over the last 2 years. And know that God's whole purpose is for each of his children to obtain immortality, which is essentially to live again. But not only just live again, but also to live with him. One of our church leaders, our current church leaders, Elder Jeffrey R. Holland, he emphasizes this very principle, and he says, the first great commandment of all eternity is to love God with all of our heart, might, mind, and strength. That is the first great commandment. But the first great truth of all eternity is that God loves us with all of his heart, might, mind, and strength. That love is the foundation stone of eternity. And it should be the foundation stone of our daily life Indeed, it is only with that reassurance burning in our souls that we can have the confidence to keep trying to improve, keep seeking for our forgiveness for our sins, and keep extending that grace to our neighbor. I'll now turn it back over to Brother Anderson.
Thanks, President Sheppard. So I want to talk for a minute about our refugee experience. One of the great ironies of our history is that the church was organized in the United States of America, where freedom of religion was guaranteed by the Constitution. Both of Joseph Smith's grandfathers, in fact, fought in the Revolutionary War. Yet, early members of our church were persecuted and driven forcibly from their homes time and time again. First from Kirtland, Ohio, then from Jackson County, Missouri, then from Caldwell and Davies counties, which had been set aside specifically by the governor as a safe space for our people. Finally, from Nauvoo, Illinois, where Joseph Smith and his brother Hiram were murdered by an armed mob. In search of peace, Joseph's successor, Brigham Young, led church members west, about 1,300 miles across the plains to the previously uninhabited Salt Lake Valley. Between 1847 and 1868, an estimated 70,000 members of our church made that trek, many of them pulling handcarts containing all of their earthly possessions. In Utah, they built their new home. But that experience changed us. It was like the refiner's fire. I think it attuned us to the necessities of the downtrodden, the rejected, and the oppressed. Not too long ago, one of our church leaders, Elder Patrick Kieran, appealed to this part of our history as he implored church members to do more for refugees around the world. I find these words particularly inspiring. He said, as members of the church, as a people, we don't have to look far back in our history to reflect on times when we were refugees, violently driven from homes and farms over and over again. Their story is our story, not many years ago. He went on, we have found refuge. Let us come out from our safe places and share with them from our abundance, hope for a brighter future, faith in God and in our fellow man, and love that sees beyond cultural and ideological differences to the glorious truth that we are all children of our Heavenly Father. I think perhaps that history explains why we are involved in humanitarian efforts around the world. In just the past couple of years, I've had the opportunity to work alongside members of our church at the Charlotte Rescue Mission, the Hospitality House of Charlotte, the Common Heart Food Pantry, and the Galilee Center. The church sponsors a free community website called justserve.org, which helps match volunteers with organizations who need their help. And more than 130 nonprofit organizations in Charlotte are represented on that site. Also, since the beginning of the COVID pandemic, the church has donated 1.65 million pounds of food to food banks and pantries in the Carolinas, including Loaves and Fishes, Second Harvest, and Catholic Charities. This is an important part of who we are. Let me just share one more quote from our current church president, Russell M. Nelson. He said this, regardless of where we call home, members of this church feel passionately about the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man. Thus, our greatest joy comes as we help our brothers and sisters, no matter where we live in this wonderful world. So our experience passing through what I'd call the crucible of persecution has become an essential part of who we are and has taught us to view others with greater empathy and to help those who are in need. President Sheppard.
Indeed, thank you. Thank you so much. So we've spoken about three origin stories this evening. First, the establishment of the church in the early 1800s, which reminds us that the way we treat others, including those of other faiths, is an important indicator of what we really believe. The second, we spoke about the creation of the earth, which reminds us that the all-powerful God of the universe is mindful of each of his children. And finally, our experience passing through the crucible of persecution has taught us to view others with greater empathy and assist those who are in need. In closing, I would like to share one of my favorite quotations from the prophet Joseph Smith. It says, if I esteem mankind to be in error, shall I bear them down? No, I will lift them up, and in their own way too. And if I cannot persuade them my way is better, and I will not seek to compel anyone to believe as I do, only by the force of reasoning, for truth will cut its own way. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we'll hear from Dr. Adeya and telling us about the origins of the Baha'i faith. And then after he's had a chance to speak, then we'll have questions. So don't forget to be adding your questions in the chat as we go. Dr. Adeya?
Yep, I'd like to thank Mr. Anderson and Mr. Sheppard to give us the information. Definitely, when I listened to them, I learned a lot of new things about their church and philosophy, and that's confirmed whatever I'm going to talk about Baha'i faith. We as a Baha'is, we believe that all the religion, they are created by the same God. So we are all continuation of the past religion, and according to our philosophy that was given by Prophet Baha'u'llah, that means glory of God, we have progressive revelation. And that progressive revelation means that God, according to the need of human, send a new messenger in different time. For the introduction to the Baha'i faith, I found this very interesting. This is coming from a history of religion. You see the book, this is the front of it, written by Karen Farrington. And she writes about the Baha'i faith. It said, fast growing and thriving, the moderate Baha'i faith is one of the recent successes stories of the religious world. It is a story in two stages. In 1844, a young Persian man by the name of Sayyid Ali Muhammad that was born on 1801, and he was martyred on 1850, revealed that he was the promised messenger or Qayyum, or some people they call him Qa'im, assuming the title of the Bab, that means gate. That's Bab, gate, mean the one is forerunner of Baha'u'llah. And then after that, after his martyrdom, the Baha'u'llah, that in translation mean glory of the God. Baha mean glory. Baha'u'llah, so is glory of the God, that is title of Baha'u'llah. And he is one of the divine messenger for new generation of humanity. And he was born in 1817 and he passed away in 1892. And he had two declarations. That was one while he was in jail. They put him in a dungeon in Tehran because of believing in the Bab, because they were prosecuting Babis. After the Bab declared his mission, the government that was mainly controlled by religious leaders, they start to prosecute him and the people that they believe in him. So his message was so strong that in the short period of his ministry, that is lasted only 6 years, many, almost like 1 million people out of 10 million population of Iran, that means one of every 10 people, they became Babi. And more than 25,000 people, they got martyred because the religious leader at that time, they saw that the Bab talking about unity, love, equality, and abolition of the old tradition that wasn't applied for the new generation of humanity. They start to prosecute the Babis. And as I said, 25,000 Babis, they were different way executed. That unfortunately, this persecution of the Baha'is. So we have to differentiate between Babis and Baha'is. The original, when the Bab declared, we call them Babis. But after execution of the Bab, when the Baha'u'llah declared, we call him Baha'i. So it's different, but they are different messengers. We consider them different messenger, but the Bab is forerunner of Baha'u'llah. And basically, Baha'u'llah came and said that it's time to unite the world. If you go to the past religion, for example, in the time of the Moses, the unity of the tribe was a major thing. But Baha'u'llah said, no, we have to be citizen of the world. I read a quote for you. Earth is one country and man is citizen. That means one family, world citizen. God, out of his love, created human. So that was the main message of the Baha'u'llah, that was unity of mankind. And then I go back to some other information. As you know, the God, according to his will, send a messenger different time. In spite of some people, they claim that their religions are the best or the last. Apparently, we see that there is no best or last. All of them are same because coming from the same source. If you look at this chart, it's very clear. It said that progressive revelation of God. And you can see on the top, it starts with Abraham, Krishna, Moses, Zoroaster, Buddha, Christ, Muhammad, the Bab, and Baha'u'llah. So these are the messenger or prophet of the God that they came different times. We don't have time to go to history of all this religion, but the latest religion is the religion of Baha'i faith that was established by Baha'u'llah. So this is mainly first introduction. One more thing that I like to talk about it, I don't know if my time passed, please remind me, because there is so much information that take hours to talk about it, but whenever it's getting close, let me know, please. Some of the teaching and principle of the Baha'i faith that most of you believe in it, definitely, is oneness of God, oneness of religion, oneness of mankind, elimination of all prejudices of all kind, according to the race, nationality, gender, and any other differences that I think Mr. Anderson and Mr. Sheppard talk about it very clearly. Individual search of truth. Baha'is, we as a Baha'is, we have the duty to search the truth. We call it investigation of the truth. In the past, because the people, they didn't have knowledge to learn or read, because there wasn't that much book, they have to listen to one person as like a priest, preacher, or whatever religious leader at that time. But in Baha'i faith, everybody is responsible for their own truth. That's what we call it, individual search for truth. Then universal auxiliary language, Baha'u'llah said, because all of us, we need to communicate with each other, in spite of having our mother language, we have to have an auxiliary language that we don't know what is that auxiliary language eventually going to be established by people of the world, so we can communicate. So anywhere you go, any country, any places, you can communicate. with each other. Equality of men and women is very important in Baha'i faith. I'm sure all of you that you are here tonight, you believe in it. And we believe that men and women are like a two wing of a bird. And think about it. If one wing of the bird is more powerful, stronger, what's going to happen to that bird? The bird will fly crooked. So we have to have this balance between men and women to be able to have a balance in the world. So this is one of the principles of the Baha'i faith. Universal education, that means education for all. Harmony of science and religion, that's another important. Unfortunately, one of the reasons that we have a lot of conflict in the world, one side, scientists, they think they are superior. Other side, the religious people, they think they are superior. But Baha'u'llah said science and religion, they should agree. And if they don't agree, we are not going to have unity and peace in the world. In the same time, he said that elimination of extreme wealth and poverty. Baha'u'llah talking about both extreme of the wealth and poverty is not acceptable, has to be a moderation. And he created a system that, again, we don't have time to talk about it, that the rich people, they need to try to help the poor people by different organizations that I think Mr. Anderson and Sheppard, they explained that to you. Also, eventually, if we're going to have world peace, that we should have it because it has been promised by God and all the prophet of the God, we should have the world government, one government in the world that control everywhere. So if somebody, any government do something wrong, that world government can control that. And then the last one is protection of cultural diversity. I like, before I end, if I have time, to say a few things about the promise of the past religion. If you read through all the past religion, all the holy book, and you really ponder on it, you see the promise of coming of the Baha'u'llah was given. I have this book that I read few of them. It said, as truly as I live, all the earth shall be filled with the glory of the Lord. They will see the glory of the Lord, the splendor of our God. Did I not tell you that if you have faith, you will see the glory of God? That's from the John 11:40. He shall come in his own glory and in his Father, when the Lord shall appear in his glory. There is a lot of quotation. Somebody counted close to 1,000 places in the Bible, Quran, and Torah with the date that promised the coming of the Baha'u'llah or prophet founder. I know I don't have that much time, but I'd like to say maybe one or two of the quotation of the Baha'i faith, especially Baha'u'llah. O thou kind Lord, unite all. Let the religion agree and make the nations one, so that they may see each other as one family and the whole earth as one home. May they all live together in perfect harmony. O God, raise aloft the banner of oneness of mankind. O God, establish the most great peace. Cement thou, O God, the hearts together. O thou kind Father God, gladden our hearts through the fragrance of thy love. I don't know, I think my time maybe is finished. If it's not, I can continue. But if it's finished, I stop. What do you think?
I think you've reached a good pausing point. I think there's probably a lot more to say, and I'm gonna remind folks that I've seen the beginnings. So if you have anything that you'd like to ask of any of our speakers or of all of them, please feel free to enter your questions into the chat box, and I'm going to kind of move through them as they came in a little bit earlier, and as we have time. And the goal is to go until probably somewhere around 8:10, so a little after 8, depending on how many questions we have. But for those of you who pay attention to timing, I like to make sure people know how much time we have, and when I promise we will be officially done by, which is around 8:10. So I wanted to start just by lifting up what Amy noted, right? How interesting that both of these religions originated in the 1800s. Both of their founders were murdered, and both seem to have arisen as a reaction against divisions in the world. And one question that I actually had that I'll get us started off with, that speaks a little bit to this idea of a reaction against divisions, is that both the Baha'i religion and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints have persecution in their origin story, as part of their origin story. And I think Mr. Anderson and Mr. Sheppard, you spoke a little bit to that in one lesson that comes out of that, but I'm curious to hear a little bit more from you, and also from all three of you, about how you think that piece of your origin story, that the story of persecution, plays into the religion itself and the practice of that religion, and also your identity as Baha'i and as people of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Great question. I guess I'll start. So for those on the call, most of you know that we part of our faith was it's a restoration, but a big part of our faith is we believe in a sacred record called the Book of Mormon, which Joseph Smith was guided by revelation to find and translate by the power of gift of God. And in that scripture, there's so many answers to some of these questions. And one of the scriptures actually that I love actually is in the Book of Mormon. It speaks about opposition, and it says, it must needs be that there is an opposition in all things, right? And so if not, speaking to his son, in the wilderness could not be brought about. Righteousness could not be brought about. So we go through opposition. And if we go through opposition the right way, meaning anchoring it to Christ, he can help us overcome all things. And so we actually become better. We become more tender. We're more sensitive. Brother Anderson mentioned, our refugee experience. You're more sensitive to those who have been displaced. If you've been displaced, you're more sensitive to those, for example, if you've broken your arm, you become more sensitive to those who you see with an arm in their sling. And so we believe that opposition actually helps us get closer to Christ. And so I think that's been a big blessing for our church.
And it also offers an explanation for the opposition that seems inevitable, at least in our current world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we think it's a feature of life. There's another passage that, as you were talking, President Sheppard, that I thought of, that's also in the Book of Mormon, at the end of a very long war that's described in the book. There's a passage that says that there were many who were hardened because of the length of the war. And then it immediately says, and there were many who were softened because of the length of the war. And so there's this dichotomy, and there's actually a real truth there, that the hard things we all go through can either soften us or can harden us. And at the end of the day, it's up to us what we do with these tough experiences that we go through. But everybody experiences difficulties. And so do we let it make us more empathetic, more compassionate, more kind, or do we let it harden us and make us, more bitter and unkind? That's kind of up to us, I think.
Thank you.
You want me to talk?
I do.
Yeah, to respond to your question, persecution of the faith and prophet has been from original beginning of the humanity and religion. So if you go back to Judaism, Christianity, Islam, always has been persecution. And the reason that I think that happened because Baha'u'llah said, I came to sacrifice myself for the humanity so they can be united as one family. And you ask why that many people, they were martyred? Because they were against old tradition of those past religion. Like I talk about Bab and Baha'u'llah. They came in Islamic country that they were believing in tradition of Islam, and they were believing that Muhammad was the last prophet that was sent by God. As I said before, always the religion, they think that prophet is the last one. That is not correct. So they were prosecuting, they were martyring those people. I told you, matter of 6 years, 25,000 people, they were martyred because the religious leader and the government, they were scared of the power of the people. They were worried that this new religion that bring the unity of mankind, talk about equality of men and women. And unfortunately, the men at that time, they didn't want to lose their power because they were allowed to do whatever they want. How many women to marry permanently, temporary, whatever. So that power struggle created this problem. So basically, the prophets and people that they came believe on them, they sacrificed it. So today we can understand that what is the right way to unite ourselves. That's my response to your question.
Thank you. Okay, so on a kind of basic understanding of terminology level, a question for you, Mr. Anderson and Mr. Sheppard. Meg writes, I understand the name Church of Jesus Christ from the introductions, but not the of Latter-day Saints part. Can you tell us about the full title? And also, I think I interact with folks from the church who actively do not want to be called Mormon, but want to be identified very specifically as the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints or LDS or whatever it is. So can you just speak a little bit to terminology and how you'd like us to speak about who you are and where you come from?
Absolutely. You want me to go first, President Sheppard?
Go ahead.
So first of all, where did the name come from? When the church was actually organized in 1830, it was originally called the Church of Jesus Christ, and then subsequently Joseph Smith received a revelation in which the Lord said, "Thus shall my church be called, the church, even the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints." And so, since that time, that became the official name of the church. What it means. When we read the New Testament, we see members of the church in the time after the ministry of Christ being referred to as saints. And so the idea is that we feel a kinship with them. We feel that our church is a restoration of that church. And so Latter-day Saints is a way of connecting us as members to the members of the ancient church, or the church at the time, after the time of Christ. And I don't know, President Sheppard, you want to talk about Mormon versus Latter-day Saint?
Yeah, definitely. But that was a perfect explanation. Yeah, Mormon. So again, the Book of Mormon was the word Mormon actually comes from an ancient prophet. He was actually the historian. He was a historian. So basically, what he did was his whole purpose was to bring all together all these writings of these prophets, right? And so if we had all the writings, it would probably be I don't know, a mountain high. I'm not sure, but what he did was he took what he felt inspired was the most important part. He abridged it. And so because he was the abridger, and he was the ancient or historian prophet, the book was named after him. But it was translated off of golden plates. And so his purpose, Mormon, he was the one that gathered all those documents, all of those writings into one plate, passed it down to his son, and he was the one that buried it. And so that's where the term Mormon comes from. So I know the name of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is a longer name, but to Brother Anderson's point, it's very important that we hold deep to that. We do believe that our church is the same exact church that existed when the Savior was on the earth. And so because we live in the latter times, that's why we're the Latter-day Saints.
Thank you. That was very helpful information for me, particularly. I assume helpful for other people as well, and new for, I imagine, not just me. What are the views of each of your faith communities on seeking out other members of religions and persuading them to convert? So I think the larger question there is really, or I'll extrapolate a larger question with apologies to Mark, who I know, if I extrapolate past what you wanted to ask. What do you do with all the other religions that exist in the world, and how does your faith tradition view itself in relation to other faiths, people of other faiths, and how all of us should interact?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the prophet Joseph Smith, he was actually interviewed by a reporter, and basically he was asked, in short, what is the basis of your church? And so he gave what we call the 13th article of faith. And the 11th article of faith, it actually says, we claim the privilege of worshiping Almighty God according to the dictates of our own conscience, and allow all men and women, of course, the same privilege to worship God, however they feel. And so we support that. We actually, matter of fact, we love interacting with other faiths. I was just speaking about Charlotte. We've been here 7 years, and I remember my first day at the job where I worked. I was in the elevator, and I was on the elevator with people I didn't even know, but they were talking about this is Monday, so they were talking about the previous day, Sunday, and what they're worshiping. And I was just amazed. And then later that week, I saw another group of folks praying together while they're eating. So we thrive on that. We believe that the more religious people we have in our community, the greater the community. And so that's how we feel a kinship, actually. That's why I love this call.
And go for it. Yeah.
Can I just add to that? When I saw that question, I thought, oh, wow, this is near and dear to my heart right now, because one of our children, one of my daughters, yesterday began her missionary service. And so in the introduction, Ladane pointed out that both President Sheppard and I both served as missionaries when we were younger. And my daughter started her missionary service yesterday, and will be traveling to Minneapolis, Minnesota, to share our beliefs, to serve, to be involved in the community there. I guess I think what I would say is, I think it's important, on the one hand, we, as President Sheppard said, we respect everyone's beliefs, and we applaud those who have deep devotions to their set of beliefs. On the other hand, we also really do like this kind of a setting where we can have interfaith exchange, where we can share our convictions and where we can hear other people's convictions. And I think it is important to us to share what we believe with other people. We think there are so many people in the world who can benefit from hearing our convictions and hopefully being inspired by them.
I think you spoke a little bit to kind of a follow-up question that was just entered in the chat, which is what is the purpose of missionary work? So if you'll speak briefly to that, and then Dr. Ahdieh, I want to give you a chance to also, of course, respond.
Well, I'm going to just say a couple words since my daughter is just getting started on this, and then if President Sheppard, if you want to add, you know, missionaries are involved in a number of activities. So they actually spend a certain amount of time every day studying the scriptures. And so during this 18 months that she will dedicate to missionary service, she'll spend some time in scripture study and in sort of deepening her own connection with God and her own understanding of our faith. She'll spend a certain amount of time serving other people in the community and at church. And then she'll spend a certain amount of time also, ideally in people's homes, sharing with them her convictions, but also, you know, in other settings, talking about what she believes. Was that, and then the question was purpose. We want to bring people closer to God. That's what we want to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
We as Baha'is, as I said, we believe in all the religion, and we believe that all the religion coming from same source. So we don't convert the people. We give information. One of the principles of the Baha'i faith is investigation of the truth. Every person has the right and ability to investigate the truth and decide what they want to be or what kind of religion they want to be. So we basically, when we talk about unity, we cannot say we are better or we like you to become like us. We explain that. One interesting thing about the children, you know, I'm a pediatrician, so we don't believe that we have to force our children at young age to become Baha'i. We talk with them as every parent does. We give them the principle, but we let them to investigate, and we do not consider them as a registered Baha'is because, you know, Baha'is, they have registration like every other religion for mailing, same thing you are doing all the time, until age 15. And that's the age that a Baha'i, a child, accept Baha'i faith or any other religion. So the purpose of investigation of the truth is our duty. It's not my duty to press you to become Baha'i or become Jewish or become Christian. My purpose as a Baha'i to give you information, then your duty is to go and investigate and find the truth for yourself.
I'll ask my own follow-up there. How do people, I guess, two-part question, which is part one is kind of, do most children who are raised in Baha'i households choose to register themselves as part of the Baha'i community? And do you find that that's kind of the primary way people become part of the Baha'i faith? Is there a high rate of people joining from elsewhere? There's a lot. That's like a kind of cool, awesome amount of choice that I feel like I hear less often in other faith traditions around how kids are raised.
Yeah, you have a good point. Our children automatically raised in Baha'i family, so they will see their parents from birth, and they see how they behave, what kind of people they are. But we don't force them to accept Baha'i faith. Mm-hmm. And you're right, most of Baha'is, they are children of the Baha'is or grandchildren. For example, I'm a 7th generation Baha'is. My first generation was a Babi that got martyred after Bob the Clare. I'm the 7th generation. And my children, they decided to become Baha'i when they became 15 years of age. So basically, again, we go back to the point that we have to let them opportunity to decide for themselves. There are children that they become Christian or become atheists, whatever it is that choice. As you said, yes, we do have some activity in other countries. We have people, they go as a pioneering to Africa, to South America, and talk about Baha'u'llah's principle, but they never force them, like, all the time, some authority, they were going to the war, killing million people to force the country to become Muslim or Christian or Jewish, whatever it was at that time. But in Baha'i faith, we don't have that concept. All we give information and they will decide what kind of religion they want to be.
Thank you. So I'm going to shift us a little bit. There was an observation that both of these faiths have immense diversity in race and ethnicity. And the question is, how do you think that experience of diversity shapes your faith and tradition?
Who want to talk first?
I'll go first. I think diversity is critical. So if you look at our church, the question was asked, why is missionary work important? Well, because everyone should have the opportunity to hear about God and his son. And so our church has missionaries throughout the world. If you go to the Philippines, there's probably, I know there's over 600,000 members of the church there. In Africa, there's tons of members there. We have members in Europe. We have them in the Pacific Islands, in the Indian Ocean, all across the United States. And so that brings diversity, right? And so, but all of us being from different regions of the world or different parts of the United States even, we have there's some unique traits or characteristics that come with our diversity. But at the same time, I think whenever you're in an environment or in a class, a Sunday school class, and you have people from all different ethnicities, different walks of life, there's different opinions. And so it actually strengthens your faith. I feel strengthened when I'm with people that are not just like me, that didn't just grow up where I grew up or just don't look just like me. Matter of fact, serving or being next to someone, for example, I'm obviously African-American, but when I'm with, members of the church that are, Polynesian or Caucasian, right? That's how what Christianity really is. If you can't serve or be with someone who does not look like you or does not talk like you, I think that's a test of where your faith's at. And so I think true Christianity is tested when there's diversity. And so you want to see how close someone follows Christ, put them in an environment where they don't look like the person or sound like them.
And that speaks to what you, to that first message that you were talking about, right? That the origin of the church speaks to the way that you treat people who are different from you. Mm-hmm. And that says more about what you actually believe than any words you could possibly say.
There's something structural in the way that we worship, which I think helps with that, which is we are assigned to congregations geographically. And so, unlike a lot of other churches, we don't choose which congregation we're going to worship with. Depending on where we live, we worship with the people who are in that same geographic area, and they change, and the boundaries change from time to time. And all of a sudden, we have a whole new set of friends. And then we may be asked to serve. We call it being called to serve in different ways. And we don't necessarily choose the people that we're going to be serving with. And, to President Sheppard's comment, I would completely echo that. I think it's a really important exercise to be in a position where you are learning to like and love people who may be completely different and who you might not have chosen as your friend on your own. And it's a really great exercise in relationship building and in learning how to respect and love other people. I mean, kind of to Ladaine, I think Ladaine, was it you who said at the beginning of all of this, that this is how we learn to understand and love one another, is by being, you know, by hearing one another and listening to one another. And I think we get that in kind of our church experience.
If it's my turn, one of the most diverse religion, as other speakers they talk, the diversity is definitely in their belief and church. One of the most diverse religion in the world is Baha'i faith. I don't have time to show you everything, but I had one picture here that shows what diverse people are there from all the country, from all the races. So basically, because belief of the Baha'i faith, Baha'is are unity of mankind, elimination of the prejudices, people, they become more prone to consider themselves as a Baha'is. That's the reason when you go to the Baha'i activity, I think Mr. Anderson has been in Baha'i Center in Charlotte, and he saw that we don't have really anything like a white or black or yellow or red. All we are like the same. When we go to the Baha'i meetings, we are brothers and sisters. We don't look at each other as a different color, different shape. That's my answer to your question.
Thank you. I mean, there's one direction I want to go down. I'm going to go down a different one instead, and then maybe I'll loop back around. There's a question about clergy and like leadership in these faith traditions. So does either of your faiths have full-time clergy, or are communities led entirely by lay leaders who have other professions in secular life? I think in part your bios speak to the way in which you live and work in the world, and also hold positions or roles or have callings within your faith. So can you speak a little bit to the leadership of each of your communities?
Definitely. Well, there's definitely no paid ministry here. Each of us are required to work. I have a full-time job. As Ladaine mentioned, I'm a financial analyst by trade. But the payments that I do receive, though, is the dividends are spiritual. And so there is this unique opportunities to serve. And it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, or your background. For example, I currently serve as, so each, Brother Anderson mentioned that each congregation is popularized by those who live with us within a certain region. We call those congregations wards. And each ward consists of about 300 to 400 people on the roster. So then when you get to, I guess, past that, then another ward's created. And so there's 8 to 10 wards that is created or organized into what we call a stake. And so currently, my current position in the church is I'm a member of a stake presidency, which means myself with 2 other brethren, we preside over 10 congregations. I can promise you that I did not choose that of myself. I would prefer to be in the back pew and just serving from there, but the Lord's been so good to me, and I'm grateful for the many opportunities I've had to meet many wonderful members of our church in these congregations and those who are investigating our church. And so I think with no paid ministry, it actually, I don't say forces, but it requires you to really dig deep. Do I really believe this? Do I really believe what I'm doing? Because I'm not getting paid to do it. And I can testify to you, I do believe it wholeheartedly, and it's a unique blessing for me, and I can speak for many of brothers and sisters who would love to be on this call that are not here.
It's a different level of stakeholdership than I think exists necessarily in traditions that have full-time staff that are paid sometimes. Yeah,
I'll just mention, we recently, my next door neighbor came to a worship service at our building, and he's not a member of our church, and he came to visit and to see, and in that meeting, they were announcing the names of all the leaders in our congregation, all the people who were in leadership positions, men and women. And what I can tell you is, partway through, he turned to me and said, "You sure have a lot of presidents." There were probably, and I don't know, in awards, President Sheppard, you probably know right off, but there were probably about 7 or 8 people who have the responsibility of being president of a different organization, and that can be the youth or different organizations, but the Sunday school. But I thought that was kind of an interesting and a telling remark that yeah, there's a lot of presidents. As you mentioned, the purpose is that everybody, there's much more of a sense of ownership. You come to church to really be a contributor.
Thank you.
That's my turn.
Yes.
The short answer to your question, no, we don't have clergy. We don't have mullahs. That's Islamic religion. As I said, the duty of Baha'is is for themselves to investigate truth for themselves. But we do have administrative order. The Baha'is, they have administrative order because every organization, every religion need administration, no question. Whenever we have 9 Baha'is in one town, we form a local spiritual assembly, like you heard, local spiritual assembly of Charlotte. There are 9 members, they are same, they get elected by secret ballot. There is no propaganda, nobody's allowed to say. You have to decide by yourself during the year who is eligible to become member of local assembly. And then once a year, according to the size of the community, we send a delegate to national, and we decide the 9 people for the National Spiritual Assembly of United States. And those are considered as a member of assembly, but their position is same. No, none of them is above each other. And every 5 years, all these national assemblies, they go to Holy Land, that's center of Baha'i faith. That is from the time that Baha'u'llah was exiled in 19th century, has become in Haifa and Akka, and they decide 9 members as a universal house of justice. And those are or leader, if you consider, or the people that they make decision. The Baha'is rule and laws that established by Baha'u'llah, that is in this book, we call it Kitab Ahdieh, is the rules, like a constitution of the United States, like Christianity's Bible or Torah. But the thing that need to be arranged that is not in the book of Ahdieh, Kitab al-Ahdieh, is decided by that 9 member of Universal House of Justice that they get elected from all over the world through the national assemblies every 5 years. That's our administrative order.
Thank you. So I'm coming up, as I promised, on 8:10, and there's so many questions that we didn't get to. It's possible Rabbi Knight is much better at managing to move through questions quickly. I have confirmation from Ladain that is not true. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Mr. Anderson and President Sheppard and Dr. Ahdieh. Thank you so much for all of the teaching that you have done and for all of the learning you have helped us do today. I want to remind everybody that we'll be back next week, and our speakers are the Reverend Aya Sudama, Pawanjit Singh from the Sikh tradition, and Thakur Tapiwala from the Hindu Center. And my apologies to all whose questions didn't get answered. I tried to focus on the ones that were least Googleable. and I missed some. So with my apologies and my gratitude, have a wonderful evening, and we will see you next week.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night,
Thanks.
everybody.
Thank you.
It was very informative. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thanks for having us.